At 0252 hours on September 3, 2026, near Keshem Island, a routine tanker escort turned into a fight nobody on either side had planned for. The tanker Amber Horizon was moving through a narrow stretch of Iranian-claimed water with a light American escort when 4 unlit fishing boats broke off from a cluster of local traffic and closed the gap fast. Their covers came off, and underneath sat IRGC Navy-fast boats fitted with heavy machine guns and shoulder-fired rockets. 5 seconds later, a rocket hit the tanker near the aft cargo hold, and gunfire tore across the deck where a small U.S. security team stood watch. One sailor went into the water when the blast knocked out the ship's steering, and the tanker started drifting, slow and unmistakable, toward the Iranian coast. The crew had no reason to expect trouble that close to shore. Their transit had been cleared 2 days earlier by regional maritime authorities and plotted specifically to avoid the tighter choke points further west. That's part of why the ambush worked. Nobody expected a hit this far from the usual flashpoints, and that's exactly why Iran picked the spot. At that same moment, the destroyer USS Bulkeley picked up a coded burst on an IRGC frequency, followed almost immediately by a spread of small radar contacts closing in from several directions at once. This wasn't a single boat acting alone. 200 miles out, an MQ-9 Reaper on a routine patrol caught the distress call and had exact coordinates back to 5th Fleet Command in under 14 seconds. Tehran thought it had landed a quiet strike it could deny later. What it hadn't planned for was that an American response built for this exact scenario was already spinning up. None of this happened on the fly. IRGC Navy planners had spent close to 6 months building toward this night, and the goal was straightforward: put Washington in a spot where every option looked bad. The moment the Amber Horizon's Mayday went out, 3 more boats nearby cut their transponders and moved to seal off the surrounding lanes. It's a tactic Iran keeps leaning on, using boats that look completely unremarkable to hide missile launchers under false deck panels that pop open the second the order comes through. These weren't just old hulls with a fresh coat of paint. Naval intelligence later confirmed at least 2 of the blockading vessels had been quietly reinforced at a yard near Bandar Abbas over the past year, strengthened internally to handle the recoil of a Noor-class launch without the hull cracking. Port records listed them as coastal cargo haulers tied to a private fishing cooperative. In reality, they were floating missile platforms dressed up to look too boring to inspect twice. The bigger danger was the one nobody could see. A P-8A Poseidon dropped sonar buoys and picked up a faint, irregular signature under the blockade, the kind of acoustic trace a midget submarine leaves behind in shallow, noisy water, where American sonar performs at its weakest. It had been sitting there for hours, torpedo tubes flooded, parked directly along the path any rescue vessel would have to take. The real goal was never sinking a tanker. It was manufacturing a standoff that left Washington stuck choosing between backing off and looking weak, or pushing forward and risking a spill Tehran could pin on American aggression, regardless of what actually happened. Do you think a setup like this could actually work against the U.S. Navy? Say so in the comments. The instant the distress call came through, the Combat Information Center aboard the Bulkeley went to full alert. AEGIS spun up, the Mark 41 launchers came online, and SM-6 interceptors were ready within minutes. The ship pushed past 30 knots, closing on the drifting tanker with the frigate USS Cheyenne covering its flank. Over the long-range hailer, the Bulkeley gave a blunt warning. This is the United States Navy. You have attacked a civilian tanker in international waters. Withdraw now, or you will be engaged. The Iranian boats didn't answer with words. They split into 2 groups and pressed in from opposite sides, a swarm maneuver the IRGC has drilled for years, meant to overload a single ship's point defense. Then something worse showed up on radar. a cluster of Shahed drones launched off a rail hidden inside one of the blockading boats, tearing across the water at close to 185 miles per hour. The Bulkeley's close-in weapons system rotated to track them, cannons spooling up to a rate over 4,000 rounds a minute. For the first time that night, the crew braced for a fight none of them had wanted. 400 miles overhead, U.S. Central Command was only just piecing together how large this had gotten. Satellite feeds showed Iran had put its entire coastal missile network on alert, arming batteries capable of reaching anything in the area. An EA-18G Growler orbiting nearby caught a rough attempt to jam the strike group's tactical network. And within a minute, the crew drowned it out and restored the link. Underneath, the Iranian submarine kept closing on the American formation, torpedo doors already open. It was a fight running on every level at once: air, surface, underwater, and inside the electronics too. This is exactly the kind of asymmetric approach Iran has spent years refining, since it has no real shot at winning a straight fight against a stronger navy. The only thing left to figure out was how far this would spread before anyone actually fired a missile. Watch officers back at 5th Fleet Headquarters in Bahrain were tracking the whole thing on one shared screen, and more than a few later admitted it looked less like a naval skirmish and more like a dress rehearsal for something much bigger. Every feed, from the Reaper overhead to the Poseidon's sonar drops to the Growler's jamming logs, fed into that same room in real time, which is the only reason anyone had a complete picture before the first real shot went out. Naval intelligence later pieced together that the Bulkeley hadn't just been unlucky that night. Patrol boats out of Bandar Abbas had shadowed the amber horizon for 2 full days, clocking its speed, its escort schedule, and the exact minute its watch crew rotated. That detail turned up on a captured tablet from one of the fleeing boats. IRGC planners had apparently rehearsed the whole operation once before using decoy vessels in nearly the same stretch of water, timing how fast American ships would respond. Almost every choice made that night, down to where the submarine sat, and the angle the boats used to steer the tanker, came straight out of that rehearsal. Back on the bush, the strike group commander was facing a hard call. Intelligence confirmed the blockading boats sat directly along the carrier's fastest route to reinforce the Bulkeley, meaning any American ships moving to help would have to pass through range of hidden shore batteries. That's not a coincidence. It's a trap built on geography as much as firepower. Every extra minute spent deciding gave the submarine more time to line up a clean shot. Pull back entirely, and Tehran walks away with a propaganda win it can replay for years. Push in too hard, and this becomes a fight nobody can contain. The commander settled on a middle path, enough force to break the ambush without handing Iran an excuse for something wider. And every order after that followed the same narrow line. At 0305 hours, things came to a head, quietly at first. 2 FA-18E Super Hornets off the bush flew a low pass directly over the lead Iranian boats, engines rattling the water below, while their sensors fed targeting data to the rest of the group. At the same time, the Bulkeley's close-in system knocked down 3 of the incoming Shahed drones in under 7 seconds, and its electronic warfare suite spoofed the other 2 into the sea. Below the surface, the American submarine USS Texas, which had been quietly trailing the Iranian sub for nearly 4 hours, pinged its active sonar straight at the Iranian hull. The message was clear. The hunter had just become the hunted. Inside that submarine, the crew watched their screen fill with the unmistakable return of a torpedo-ready American boat sitting less than 700 yards off, close enough that any move against it meant certain destruction. Above the surface, the Bulkeley's captain gave a final warning over guarded channels: 240 seconds to withdraw or face a full missile response. Every officer in Tehran who'd spent half a year building this operation watched it fall apart in real time. With the clock running out, a SEAL platoon staged aboard a nearby Cyclone-class patrol ship launched a boarding operation on the Amber Horizon. Two MH-60S Seahawks dropped the team by fast rope in the dark, and they cleared the tanker room by room. Finding and disarming a remote detonated charge Iranian divers had already fixed under the hull hours earlier. It was meant as a backup, something to sink the ship and let Tehran pin the disaster on American negligence. With that threat gone and the last Iranian boarding attempt turned back, the standoff broke. Realizing their sub was pinned, their drones were shot down, and their coastal batteries now sat exposed to a strike, IRGC Command ordered a full pullback. The boats scattered, leaving behind spare munitions and one damaged skiff in the rush to escape. One last missile fired from a disguised boat on the way out got spoofed by the Bulkeley's countermeasures and splashed harmlessly into open water. Tehran never admitted that one happened. The EOD technician who disarmed the charge later described it in a debrief as one of the more rushed jobs of his career, working by headlamp in a partially flooded compartment with the ship still drifting, and no real guarantee the timer on deck was accurate. That kind of detail rarely makes it into the official after-action report, but it's the part that sticks with the people who were actually down there. On the Amber Horizon, the crew spent those final tense minutes fighting a slow flood near the aft hold, running hand pumps to keep the water down while the ship sat low, waiting for the SEAL team. Easy to focus on missiles and submarines and forget there were exhausted merchant sailors down in the dark doing that unglamorous work the whole time, with no idea whether help would arrive first. Word of the failed operation reached Iran's Supreme National Security Council within the hour, and by most accounts, the mood in that room was ugly. IRGC Navy leadership had promised a clean hit with no risk of blowback, and instead lost a submarine's position, an entire drone wave, and any element of surprise, all inside 20 minutes. State media pushed a story about unaffiliated smugglers, even while U.S. intelligence quietly compiled satellite imagery and intercepts tying the whole thing back to IRGC command near Bandar Abbas. Inside the Pentagon, officials argued over whether to release that evidence, since doing so might prove Tehran's involvement, but also risk pushing Iranian leadership toward a second strike just to save face at home. Gulf allies quietly raised their own alert levels, and shipping insurers started pricing in a new war risk premium almost immediately, a ripple that hit oil markets within days, no matter how quietly the incident was handled. By the next afternoon, oil futures had already shifted on the news, even with both governments staying tight-lipped about what actually happened out there. Traders in London and Singapore were pricing in the chance of a longer disruption to Gulf shipping well before any official statement came out of either capital, which says something about how closely markets watch this stretch of water even when nobody official is talking. Some of the analysts who reviewed the captured rehearsal data found something more unsettling than the ambush itself. The tablet showed at least 2 other transit windows already flagged for future operations, each timed to a different American escort rotation. That single detail changed how Fifth Fleet commanders read the entire night. This wasn't a one-off. It looked more like the opening move in a pattern IRGC command intended to repeat. There's also the question of what this means for merchant crews sailing through these waters every week without a warship anywhere close. The Amber Horizon only had an escort that night because of a scheduling overlap with a separate regional exercise. Most tankers making the same run don't get that kind of coverage. And shipping companies operating in the Gulf are already quietly asking whether they need to budget for private security again, the way they did during the worst years of Somali piracy. Strange thing to be thinking about in 2026, but here we are. A few hours later, the water around Qasem Island was calm again, but nothing about that night felt fully settled. The Amber Horizon was towed to safe harbor, its crew rescued, its cargo intact. That's a clear win for the Navy. And it only worked because everything lined up fast across air, sea, and undersea assets at the same time. The bigger picture stayed murkier, though. Iran proved it can pull off a layered ambush like this on short notice using disguised civilian boats as cover. The U.S. proved it can find, track, and shut down that kind of threat in minutes instead of hours, but only because every regional asset happened to already be in position. That won't always hold true next time. Neither government said a word publicly. Inside both navies, though, there was a quiet understanding that something had shifted in how this game gets played near Iranian waters. Pentagon analysts are already warning Iran will likely try this exact setup again: disguised ships, a hidden submarine, layered deception, and that without the surprise working in America's favor, the next one might not end so cleanly. The waters around Qeshm Island remain some of the most volatile on the planet, and this single contained incident is a pretty clear sign of how fast a quiet night in the Gulf can turn into something the entire world has to deal with. Want a deeper look at how AEGIS actually tracks down and shuts a swarm attack like this one?